A Plague Tale: Innocence is an action-adventure stealth game developed by Asobo Studio, published by Focus Home Interactive. It was released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in May of 2019, with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series XX versions being released in July of 2021. Set in the 14th century of Aquitaine, France during the Hundred Years' War, the game focuses on the plight of Amicia de Rune and her ill brother Hugo as they flee from soldiers of the French Inquisition and from hordes of rats as they are spreading the Black Plague. The player controls Amicia using a combination of stealth and limited tools that hide from, distract or knock out soldiers, evade rat hordes, and solve puzzles, incorporating elements of survival horror games. The game's development was led by Asobo Studio. It is their first original title since the team created the racing game Fuel in 2009, and the company wanted to create a narrative-driven experience inspired by The Last of Us and The Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. The main theme of Plague Tale: Innocence is family, and how characters and relationships are challenged during adverse circumstances. Another important theme is innocence. Hugo in particular will observe the player's character's behaviors and slowly transform from an innocent boy to a ruthless individual. Child actors Charlotte McBurney and Logan Hannon provided their voice for Amicia and Hugo respectively. The two also participated in the writing process by suggesting changes to dialogue and alternative takes. Up to 5,000 rats can appear on screen simultaneously. To ensure that the game can handle the rendering so many enemies without sacrificing performance, the team introduced 4 layers of details when rendering the rats, in which rats furthest away from the player character exist as background and non-animated mesh, whereas the rats closest to the player are animated in detail. Now, this game immediately captured me for the first time when I played the demo version, but then I ummed and ahed for quite some time whether to play the full game in itself. Eventually one day I decided to play the whole version, and I'm not sorry I did. This is a very interesting, dark game, and quite eerie too. I particularly enjoyed being taken back to medieval Europe, a time in history I've always been absolutely fascinated with. And the game encapsulates this time perfectly, its dark, its dreary, and its drab existence, where life was hard and made tougher by the rise of the bubonic plague, a disease carried by rats, one of the world's most easily dislikable creatures, and an animal that lends itself perfectly to the horror genre. I was almost hoping that the game would be grounded in more reality when it came to the rats, and in many ways what they are portraying in the game is real. The rats were carrying this plague, and were of course very scary. In this game, though, they make them absolutely terrifying, as they swarm and gather and devour anything in their sight. There are also times within the game where you hear rumbling underground, and suddenly this volcano or explosion of rats just come filling out onto your screen. Now, obviously, there are plenty of fantastical elements added to the game, particularly the way now that you can control the rats and use them to your will at times. Nonetheless, though, using rats as one of the main antagonists is an interesting angle for a game, and I did thoroughly enjoy this aspect of it. What is grounded in reality, though, is the fundamental story of your main characters. Here you see the tragic story of Amicia and Hugo de Rune, whose whole family are killed by the French Inquisition. Also, the tragic start of the game, right at the start, where her dog Leon is killed by this mysterious force under the ground, is absolutely heartbreaking. Now, as the player, you assume control of Amicia de Rune, and is played from a third-person perspective. Rather than a confrontational game, you need to utilize stealth in order to avoid hostile encounters, as well as enemies who will kill Amicia instantly if they catch her. Amicia is equipped with a sling that can throw rocks and break chains, create distractions, or stun guards along the way, enough for rats to ambush them. She can also kill enemies with a headshot if their head is unprotected. The game also consists of several survival puzzles, which mostly consist of the player having to use specific methods to scare away or distract the hordes of hungry rats in order to gain access to new areas or direct them towards enemies. The primary method of warding off rats is fire, as they will seldom enter with the radius of burning torches and braziers. Amicia can craft special ammunition and supplies, which include fire-starting sulfur stones and ignite braziers, stink bombs, and attract rats, or fire suppressants to extinguish torches that are carried by enemies. Amicia's younger brother, Hugo, can be directed towards specific tasks with Amicia is busy, and can also access certain areas that she cannot. However, this is risky, as Hugo will start to panic if left alone, and can attract unwanted attention. Later in the game, the player can assume control of Hugo, who cannot craft items, but can control the rats and sneak through small spaces. As I say, the characters are fascinating, and I really enjoyed playing as Amicia, as she learns to accept her brother and his illness, or power as we later learn, knowing that his blood carries the supernatural evil called the Prima Macula. Along the way you meet the characters like the Doctor's apprentice Lucas, sibling thieves Melee and Arthur, and of course, the wonderfully brave blacksmith Roderick. The background graphics are very good, if not incredibly macabre, and give you the sense of unease as you climb over dead bodies and wade through the mud. The main boss fight at the end with Vitalis is quite hectic and tense to say the least, and I particularly enjoyed the antagonists in this game, from of course Lord Nicholas to Vitalis himself. And this game plays on the oppression of the church at the time and how it ruled with an iron fist. The graphics are good without being fantastic, and the gameplay can be a little bit repetitive at times, as you sometimes miss the ability to actually confront your antagonist rather than just run and hide, but in the same way this makes this game quite unique. The characters are well defined, and the story is very interesting and dark and intense, and I really look forward to playing A Plague Tale Requiem to see where we go next with Amicia and Hugo. A Plague Tale Innocence gets an 8.5 out of 10.